Hey everyone, welcome back. Tonight, just like always, we're going to slow things down a little. If you're new here, this is the kind of place where you can just relax, maybe have a game running in the background, or even try to fall asleep while listening to some stories. Before we get into it, I just want to say I really appreciate you being here. Seriously. Whether you're watching this while playing something, lying in bed, or just letting it play quietly in the background, it genuinely means a lot. And as always, feel free to leave a comment telling me what you're doing while listening. Alright, let's get into the story. So this happened about a year ago, and even now I still don't really know how to explain it properly. It started off completely normal, like really normal. I had just moved into a new place. Not an apartment this time, an actual house. Small, nothing fancy, just a single-story place in a quiet neighborhood about 30 minutes outside the city. I'd been saving up for a while, and this was kind of my first real step into having something that felt permanent. No roommates, no shared walls, just space, and honestly, that's all I wanted. The neighborhood itself was quiet in that almost too quiet kind of way, not creepy, just calm, the kind of place where nothing really happens. You'd see the same cars parked in the same spots every day, same people walking their dogs, same lights turning on around the same time each night. Predictable, that's the word, and I liked that. The first couple of weeks were exactly what I expected, unpacking, setting things up, figuring out where everything goes. You know how it is, that slow process of turning a place into something that actually feels like yours. Work was normal too. I work remotely, so most of my day is just sitting at my desk, headphones on, getting through tasks. Nothing exciting, but stable, routine. And again, I liked that. For about 3 weeks, nothing unusual happened at all. Then one morning, I noticed something small. So small that at the time I didn't even think twice about it. I woke up, made coffee, walked into the living room, and the front door was unlocked. Not open, just unlocked. Now I'm the kind of person who double-checks things, especially in a new place. Locks windows, lights, all of it, and I remembered locking that door the night before. Clearly, but still. It's the kind of thing you can second-guess, right? Maybe I got distracted. Maybe I thought I locked it but didn't, so I didn't overthink it. I just locked it again and moved on. That was it, nothing dramatic. But later that same day, something else happened. I came back from grabbing groceries, probably gone for about 40 minutes, and when I walked into the kitchen, one of the cabinet doors was open. Just slightly, not wide, just enough to notice. And again, that's not that weird. Maybe I left it open. Maybe I didn't fully close it. But here's the thing, I hadn't used that cabinet at all that day. It was one of the upper ones. I barely even touched it since moving in. And I remember standing there for a second, just looking at it. Not scared, just thinking, trying to replay the morning in my head, but nothing clicked. So again, I let it go. Because the alternative, that something else caused it, didn't make sense. At least not yet. I made a point to check everything. Doors locked, windows closed, lights off. I even stood there for a second after locking the front door just to make sure. Then I went to bed, and for the first time since moving in, I felt just slightly aware. Not nervous, just paying more attention. Like my brain had quietly filed those two things away and was waiting to see if anything else happened, and for a few days nothing did. Everything went back to normal, routine, predictable, quiet. Which honestly made me feel a little stupid for even noticing those things in the first place. Like I had just overanalyzed two completely harmless moments, and that should have been the end of it, but it was. Because about 4 days later, something happened that I couldn't explain away so easily. It was late, maybe around 11:30 p.m. I was sitting in the living room just scrolling on my phone, TV on in the background, nothing unusual, just winding down before bed. At some point, I got up to grab water from the kitchen, and when I walked past the hallway, I noticed the bathroom light was on. I stopped because I was certain it had been off, not pretty sure. Certain I hadn't used that bathroom all evening and I hadn't turned that light on, so I just stood there for a second looking at it, trying to think, did I go in there earlier and forget? Did I leave it on without realizing? But the more I thought about it, the less it made sense. Still. I walked over, turned it off, and went back to the living room, and this time I didn't sit down right away. I just stood there in the middle of the room, listening, because now it wasn't just one thing, it was a pattern, small things but consistent, and that's when the thought finally showed up. Clear, simple, uncomfortable. What if I'm not the only one here? I didn't fully believe it, not even close. But once that idea enters your head, it doesn't leave, not easily. I checked the doors again, locked, windows, closed, everything exactly how it should be. No signs of anything, no sounds, nothing. So I told myself the same thing again, you're overthinking, it's nothing, just a new place, new environment, your brain is adjusting, that's all. And for the rest of the night, I tried to believe that, but when I went to bed, I did something I hadn't done before. I closed my bedroom door and locked it, not because I thought something was going to happen, just because it felt better. And that was the moment everything started to change. Because from that night on, I didn't just notice things, I started expecting them. The next morning, everything looked normal again, and honestly, that was almost worse. Because if something is obviously wrong, at least your brain knows what to do with it. But when everything looks fine, when the house is quiet, the locks are still set, the windows are closed, and there's no sign of anything at all, that's when you start questioning yourself, and that's exactly what I did. All morning, while making coffee, while answering emails, while half listening in meetings, I kept replaying the night before in my head, trying to reduce it to something simple. Maybe I turned on the bathroom light without thinking. Maybe I'd gotten distracted. Maybe I was more tired than I realized. That explanation didn't feel right, but it felt a lot better than the alternative, so I went with it. At least for the moment, that day passed normally. No open cabinets, no unlocked doors, no lights turning on by themselves. Nothing. And by the afternoon, I had almost convinced myself that I'd just gotten inside my own head too much. That happens when you live alone. Little things feel bigger because there's nobody else around to interrupt the thought spiral. So by the time evening came around, I felt mostly normal again. I made dinner, cleaned up, watched something stupid on TV. And I remember actually thinking, okay, yeah, you were definitely overreacting. Then I went into the kitchen to put a glass in the sink and froze because the back door was unlocked. Again, now that one got to me more than the front door had, because I barely used the back door at all. It opened onto a tiny fenced-in yard, and unless I was taking the trash out or bringing something in from the car, I basically never touched it, and I definitely hadn't used it that day. So this time, instead of just locking it and moving on, I stood there and actually checked it. The lock, the handle, the frame, everything looked normal. No damage, no signs of someone forcing it. Nothing. I locked it carefully, then unlocked it again just to see how it felt. Normal. Locked it one more time. Then I stepped back and just stared at it, because now I had two separate doors on different days, both unlocked when I was sure they shouldn't have been. And that's not impossible. But it's harder to brush off. That night I checked every door and window in the house twice. Not casually, not out of habit. Slowly, deliberately. Front door, back door, bedroom windows, living room windows, bathroom, kitchen, everything. Then I pulled out my phone and wrote it down, not because I thought I was in danger, just because I needed something outside of my own memory. A note that said, 11:48 p.m, checked front door, back door, all windows, everything locked. It felt dramatic. But it also felt grounding. Like if something happened again, at least I'd know I wasn't imagining the pattern. Then I went to bed. Bedroom door locked again. And this time I didn't sleep well. Not because of a sound, not because anything happened, just because I was listening for it. Every house makes noise at night. Pipes settle, floorboards creak, the fridge clicks on and off, air shifts through vents. Normally your brain filters all that out, but once you're alert to it, every tiny sound feels loaded. Every little noise makes you stop and think, was that normal? I must have fallen asleep eventually, because the next thing I remember was waking up to sunlight. And for one brief second I felt relieved, because it was morning. Nothing had happened. I got out of bed, unlocked the bedroom door and walked into the hallway and stopped. The bathroom door was open. Not wide open, just a few inches, but enough that I knew because I always keep it shut. Always, it's just one of those small habits, and now it was open. I walked over slowly and looked inside. Nothing looked out of place. No light on, no items moved around, just the door, open. I stood there for a long time, longer than I want to admit. Because once again, it wasn't enough to prove anything. Not really. A door being open is not a crisis, it's barely even a story. But the issue wasn't the door itself, it was the pattern, things changing when I wasn't looking, things shifting just enough to notice. And always in ways that sounded ridiculous when reduced to a single sentence. The bathroom door was open. So what? That's the problem. Individually, each thing was nothing. Together, they started to feel like something. That afternoon, I called my sister. Not because I thought she'd solve it, just because I needed to say it out loud to another person and hear how it sounded. So I told her everything. The front door, the cabinet, the light, the back door, the bathroom door. There was a pause after I finished, and then she said the exact thing I'd already started to expect from anyone reasonable. Are you sure you're not just forgetting stuff? And the annoying part was it was a fair question, so I said yes. Or at least I said I thought so. She told me I was probably stressed from the move, adjusting to being alone in a new house, maybe not sleeping well. And again, none of that was wrong, but it didn't help, because if you're already doubting yourself, hearing someone else say it just pushes you deeper into that doubt. So after the call, instead of feeling reassured, I felt worse. Not scared, just less certain. And uncertainty is exhausting. That evening, I made another decision. I was going to test it, not in some elaborate way, just something simple. Before bed, I walked through the house and took photos. Back door locked, bathroom door shut, kitchen cabinets closed, living room lamp off, all of it, just quick phone photos, time-stamped. Then I put my phone on the nightstand, went to bed and locked the bedroom door again. If something changed overnight, I'd have proof, or at least something closer to proof than memory. And weirdly, that made me feel calmer. Like for the first time, I was doing something practical instead of just circling around the feeling. I fell asleep faster that night. Still not great sleep, but better. And in the morning, before I even brushed my teeth, before coffee, before anything, I checked the house. At first glance, everything looked fine. Bathroom door still shut, lamp still off, back door still locked. And for a second, I actually felt stupid again, like of course nothing changed. Of course. Then I walked into the kitchen. And one of the upper cabinet doors was open. Same one as before, just slightly, a few inches. I stopped and looked at it. Then I pulled out my phone and opened the photo from the night before. Closed, clearly closed. Now open. I don't know how long I stood there, but it was long enough that the silence in the house started feeling heavier than usual. Because this time I couldn't just say I remembered wrong. This time there was evidence, not dramatic evidence, but enough. Enough to tell me that something had changed while I was asleep, and I hadn't done it, at least not knowingly. That's when the next possibility showed up, one I liked even less than the idea of an intruder. What if I was doing it myself, sleepwalking, some weird half-conscious routine I didn't remember? That would explain a lot. The lights, the doors, the cabinets, even the unlocked back door maybe. And honestly, for a few minutes, that explanation felt like a relief. Because sleepwalking is weird, sure, but it's normal weird, manageable weird, the kind of thing you can solve. So I held on to that possibility immediately, probably harder than I should have, because it was the first explanation that made the pattern make sense. I spent the rest of the day reading about sleepwalking, and the more I read, the more possible it seemed. People moving around the house, turning lights on, opening doors, doing random small tasks. Then not remembering any of it the next morning. It fit, not perfectly, but enough that I started believing that was probably it. And honestly, I want it to be that, badly, because if it was me, then at least I was dealing with something real and solvable, not something I couldn't understand. So that night I made another note on my phone. Possible explanation, sleepwalking. And for the first time in days, I felt like maybe I was getting somewhere. I had no idea yet. This explanation was about to fall apart too. Once I landed on the sleepwalking explanation, I held onto it hard, probably because I needed something that made the situation feel manageable. If I was sleepwalking, then okay, weird, inconvenient, maybe a little unsettling, but still explainable. Still something that belonged to the normal world. So I started treating it like a real possibility. That same day, I ordered 2 things online. The first was a cheap indoor camera. Nothing fancy, just one of those motion-detecting cameras people use for pets or packages or checking in on a room while they're away. The second thing was a simple door chime for my bedroom door. Not an alarm exactly, just a little battery-powered thing that would make noise if the door opened. My thinking was pretty straightforward. If I was the one doing all this in the middle of the night, then the camera would show it. And if I got out of bed and opened the bedroom door, the chime might wake me up, or at least tell me the next morning that I had left the room. It felt practical, grounded, the kind of solution a rational person would try, and that helped. A lot, actually, because when you're dealing with uncertainty, even a flimsy plan can make you feel less helpless. The camera arrived first. I set it up in the hallway that same evening, angled so it could see the path from my bedroom door toward the bathroom and kitchen. Not the whole house, just enough. If I walked out in the middle of the night, it would catch me. I tested it a few times, walked into frame, checked the playback, made sure the motion alerts worked, everything looked fine. Then I attached the little chime to the bedroom door. Again, tested it. Open the door, it chirps. Simple. By the time I finished setting everything up, I actually felt better. Not safe exactly, but closer to normal than I had in days, because now for the first time I wasn't just waiting for something strange to happen. I had a way to verify it. That matters more than people realize. Sometimes the scariest part of something isn't the event itself. It's the feeling that you can't prove it happened, that it only exists in the blurry space between memory and doubt. So I went to bed that night feeling more settled than usual. Bedroom door locked, chime on, camera recording, phone charging on the nightstand, and I remember thinking, okay, if it's me, I'll know tomorrow. When I woke up the next morning, the first thing I noticed was silence. No chime in the middle of the night, no memory of waking up, no nothing, just morning. I sat up, looked at the bedroom door, and immediately checked the little chime. Still attached, still on. Then I unlocked the door and stepped into the hallway. Everything looked normal at first. Bathroom door shut, kitchen quiet, no lights on, which should have been reassuring. But by then I had already learned not to trust the first glance, so I went straight to the camera footage. Opened the app, scrolled to the overnight timeline, and there was a motion event. At 3:14 a.m. I stared at that timestamp for a second, because my first thought was actually relief. That was it. That was what I needed. I probably had gotten up, sleepwalked into the kitchen or bathroom, moved something around, and now I'd finally be able to see it. I tapped the clip. The hallway appeared on screen, dark, grainy still. For the first couple of seconds nothing happened. Then the bathroom door opened. Slowly, on its own, no one in frame, no one coming out of my bedroom, no one at all. Just the bathroom door opening a few inches, and stopping. I replayed it immediately. Same thing again, same thing. I watched it 4 or 5 times in a row, leaning closer to the screen each time like maybe there'd be some detail I missed. A shadow, a reflection, myself, barely visible in the dark. Anything, there was nothing. No person, no movement before the door, just the door itself. Opening, that's it. I felt this weird, hollow drop in my stomach, because that didn't fit the sleepwalking explanation. At all. Not unless I had somehow walked down the hallway completely out of frame, opened the door without appearing anywhere, and then vanished back into the room without triggering another motion clip. Which didn't make sense, so I checked the rest of the timeline. No other motion events, nothing before, nothing after, just that one clip. 3:14, bathroom door opening on its own. I sat there for a long time after that, long enough for my coffee to go cold. Because once again I was back in that place where no explanation felt good. If it wasn't sleepwalking, then what was it? And before my brain could go anywhere more dramatic, I forced myself to think of practical things. Air pressure, loose latch, uneven floor, old house, that kind of stuff, because doors can move right, houses shift, frames settle, things don't always close perfectly. That's real, that's normal. So I got up and checked the bathroom door, opened it, closed it, opened it halfway. Left it cracked, nothing unusual. The latch felt normal. The hinges were fine. The door didn't swing open on its own, didn't drift, didn't move unless I pushed it. Still, I wasn't ready to let go of the mechanical explanation. Not yet, because even if it didn't fully fit, it still felt better than the alternative. That afternoon, I tried an experiment. I closed the bathroom door to the exact same position as it had been the night before. Then I waited. An hour, nothing. I turned on the AC. Nothing. Opened a window in the kitchen to create airflow. Nothing. Stomped around the hallway a little like an idiot trying to shake the house. Still nothing. The door stayed exactly where I left it, which didn't prove anything technically, but it didn't help, because if you can't recreate the thing that happened, it becomes harder to believe it was random, and harder to dismiss. That evening I almost called it quits, not in some dramatic, I'm leaving the house right now way. Just mentally, like I was tired. Tired of analyzing cabinet doors and locks and footage of empty hallways. Tired of feeling dumb every time I described it in my own head, so I told myself something simple. One more night of recording. If something happens again, I deal with it. If not, maybe this fades out and I let it go. That was the plan, or at least that's what I said to myself. I left the camera where it was, bedroom chime still attached, door locked. Same setup as before, and I went to bed. This time I didn't sleep as easily, not because I expected something specific, just because now there was video, now it wasn't just memory, and that changed the feeling of everything. The house itself didn't feel different, still the same walls, same hallway, same quiet neighborhood outside, but it felt like there was something happening inside it that I couldn't see in real time, only afterward, only in traces. And that's a very uncomfortable way to exist in a place. At some point in the night I woke up, not fully, just enough to realize I had heard something, a sound from somewhere in the house, very faint, like a soft click. Then silence. I lay there listening, completely still, no footsteps, no voices, no more clicks, nothing. Eventually I must have fallen back asleep. And when morning came, the first thing I did was check the bedroom chime, still attached, still on, then the camera. There were 2 motion clips this time. My chest tightened a little just seeing that, not panic, just that immediate internal shift where your body knows before your thoughts catch up that you're not going to like what you're about to see. I opened the first clip. 2:51, hallway dark, empty. Then slowly the kitchen light turned on, not all at once like a power flicker. Just exactly the way a normal light turns on when someone flips the switch, except there was nobody there. I actually felt my whole body go cold watching that, because a door opening can maybe be a draft. Maybe a light switch, that's different, that requires something. Action, input, and yet on the clip there was nothing. No one in the hallway, no one entering from the kitchen. No one coming out of my bedroom, just darkness and then light. I watched the second clip immediately after. 3:07 a.m. the hallway again. The kitchen light still on, then after about 3 seconds. One of the upper kitchen cabinet doors opened, the same one, just a few inches, and stopped. I remember just staring at the screen after that second clip ended, not even replaying it right away, because the sleepwalking explanation was gone now, completely gone. If I had been moving around the house, the camera would have caught me, the bedroom chime would have sounded, neither thing had happened, and yet things were still changing, lights, doors, cabinets, all while I slept, all without me. For the first time since this started, I had to sit with a possibility I had been avoiding from the beginning, that whatever was happening in the house wasn't me. After that second night of footage, I didn't try to explain it anymore, not right away, because there's a point where your brain just kind of pauses, like it doesn't know which direction to go, so it just stops trying. And that's where I was, sitting there in the kitchen, phone in my hand, replaying the clip of the light turning on by itself. Over and over, looking for something I missed. A shadow, a reflection, anything, but every time it was the same. Nothing, just the result. I didn't go to work that day. I logged in, told my team I wasn't feeling well, and closed my laptop. Because there was no way I was going to sit there trying to focus on spreadsheets and meetings while this was happening. Instead, I stayed in the house. Which, looking back, might sound like the opposite of what I should have done, but at the time, I needed to understand it. Or at least try, so I walked through every room. Slowly, not looking for anything specific, just observing, checking things I hadn't thought about before. Closets, corners, behind doors, inside cabinets, under the bed, even the attic access panel, everything, and of course there was nothing. No signs of anyone being there, no damage, no missing items, nothing out of place, just a normal house. Which at that point was starting to feel like the least believable part of the situation. Around midday I called the landlord, not because I thought he'd say anything useful, but because I needed another angle, another perspective, so I asked him if there had ever been any issues with the house. Electrical problems, door alignment, anything unusual. He sounded confused, said no, the house was in good condition. No previous tenants had reported anything. No electrical faults, no structural problems, just a normal property. Then he asked me why, and I hesitated. Because how do you explain something like this without sounding ridiculous? So I didn't. I just said I'd noticed a couple of things and wanted to check. He told me to let him know if anything needed fixing, and that was it. Conversation over. By the time evening came around, I had two choices: leave or stay, and I did think about leaving. Seriously, not forever, just for a night. Go stay at a hotel, or crash at a friend's place. Get out of the house, clear my head, come back later. But something stopped me, and it wasn't logic. It was something else, a kind of stubbornness maybe, or curiosity, because if I left I'd never really know. And part of me needed to know, even if I didn't like the answer, so I stayed. That night I made a change. Instead of going to bed at my normal time, I stayed up. Not all night, just late, later than usual. Because so far, everything had been happening between around 2:30 and 3:30 a.m., so I figured. What happens if I'm awake? Do things still happen, or does it only occur when I'm not aware? That felt like an important difference. So I set up the camera like before, left the bedroom door open this time, chimes still on, lights off in most of the house, just the living room lamp on, and I sat on the couch, waiting. The first hour was nothing, just quiet, normal, the TV playing softly in the background. The occasional sound from outside, a car passing, maybe a dog barking somewhere in the distance. Everything felt grounded, like this was just a normal night, which actually made it easier to stay calm. The second hour was when things started to shift, not visibly, not yet, just the feeling, that same subtle awareness from before, like the house wasn't doing anything different, but I was, listening more closely. Noticing every tiny sound, every little change in the environment. Around 2:40 a.m. I heard it, that same sound from the previous night, a soft click from somewhere in the house. I muted the TV immediately, sat completely still. Listened, nothing, then another sound, softer like something shifting slightly, and this time I knew where it came from. The kitchen. I stood up slowly, not rushed, not panicked, just deliberate, and I walked toward the hallway, step by step. Every movement felt louder than it should have, even though I knew I was being quiet, and as I reached the corner I could see into the kitchen, and I stopped, because the light was on. Same as in the video, but this time I was awake, watching it in real time. The switch itself wasn't visible from where I stood, but the light was fully on, no flicker, no transition, just on. I stayed there for a few seconds, not moving, not breathing any louder than necessary, just watching, waiting. Nothing else happened, no movement, no sound, just the light, so I took another step forward, then another. And when I reached the kitchen doorway, everything was still, completely still. The cabinet doors were closed, nothing out of place, just the light. I walked over to the switch, stared at it, then turned it off. Normal, no resistance, no delay, just a regular switch. And that's when I realized something that hadn't been obvious before. Whatever was happening wasn't reacting to me. Because I was there, awake, watching, and it still happened, which means it didn't care whether I saw it or not. I didn't go back to the couch after that. I stayed in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, waiting, because now I needed to know if it would continue, if it would do something else, but nothing happened, not for a while. Minutes passed, then more, and eventually I started to feel a kind of strange calm, not because things made sense, but because I had finally seen it directly. No footage, no second guessing, no maybe I forgot, just something happening in front of me, and once that line is crossed, your brain stops trying to rationalize it in the same way. It just accepts that something is off. Around 3:10 a.m. I heard another sound, this time closer from the hallway. I turned immediately, and I saw it, the bathroom door moving, not swinging open fast, not creaking dramatically, just slowly opening, a few inches, then stopping. Exactly like in the video, and I stood there, fully awake, watching it happen, with no one there, no hand on the handle, no shadow, no explanation, just movement, controlled, precise, and completely uncaused. I didn't approach it right away, I just stood there, because there's a moment in situations like that where your brain is trying to decide how to react, and every option feels wrong. Move closer, stay still, turn on more lights, leave. None of them felt like the correct response. So I did nothing, I just watched. And after a few seconds the door stopped, and everything went quiet again, like whatever had just happened was finished. I don't know how long I stood there after that. It could have been a minute, it could have been 10. Time feels weird when you're that focused on something. Eventually I walked over to the bathroom, pushed the door open fully, looked inside. Nothing, exactly the same as before, no changes, no signs of anything, just a normal bathroom. And that's when the reality of it settled in. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just quietly. This wasn't something I could explain away anymore. Not with sleepwalking, not with drafts, not with faulty wiring, because I had seen it, directly, while fully awake. And whatever it wasn't random, it was consistent, controlled, and happening inside the house. Whether I understood it or not, I didn't sleep at all that night. I just sat in the living room until morning. Lights on. TV off, listening, waiting, but nothing else happened. And when the sun came up, the house looked exactly the same as it always did. Quiet, normal, unremarkable, like none of it had ever happened. But now I knew, and once you know something like that, you can't go back to not knowing. Part 5. After that night, everything changed, not the house itself. Not the layout, not the sounds, not the way it looked during the day. All of that stayed exactly the same, but my relationship to it changed completely. because now I wasn't guessing anymore, I had seen it, and that removes a certain kind of comfort you didn't realize you had until it's gone. The next morning I didn't try to analyze it, didn't rewatch the footage, didn't replay the moment in my head, I just moved through the day, slowly, quietly, like I was trying not to disturb something. It's the part that bothered me the most, not what I had seen, but how quickly I had adjusted to it, like my brain had already started accepting it as part of the environment. That shouldn't happen, but it does. When something repeats enough, it becomes less shocking. Not normal, just familiar. I still had the camera running, still had the door chime, still had everything set up. But now, instead of using those things to prove something, I was using them to track it, because I had a feeling now. A strong one that whatever this was, it followed a pattern. And if there's a pattern, there's something you can learn from it, even if you don't understand it fully. That night I didn't stay up again, not because I wasn't curious, but because I wanted to see if it behaved the same way when I wasn't watching. So I went back to the original setup. Bedroom door locked, lights off, camera recording, and I went to sleep. The next morning there were 3 clips, not 1, not 2, 3. I opened the first one, 2:58 a.m. hallway, still. Then the kitchen light turned on again, same as before, no visible cause. Just on. Second clip, 3:05 a.m. the hallway again, the bathroom door opening slightly, same motion, same speed, same stopping point. Third clip, 3:12 a.m. kitchen. Cabinet door opening, same cabinet, same distance, and that's when something clicked, not in a solution kind of way, just recognition. The timing, each event was spaced out. Not random, not all at once. Sequential like a routine, light, door, cabinet, and always in roughly the same window, between about 2:50 and 3:20, which meant this wasn't chaotic, it was structured. That realization made things feel different, because randomness is easier to dismiss, but structure means consistency, and consistency means intention, not necessarily human intention, but something. Over the next few nights I didn't change anything. I kept the routine exactly the same, went to bed at the same time, left things in the same state, camera on, door locked, and every morning there were clips, not always the same number, sometimes 2, sometimes 3. Once there were 4, but always the same types of actions. Light, door, cabinet, and always in that same window, never earlier, never later. After about 4 nights of that, I noticed something else, something more subtle. The amount of change depended on what I left out of place. At first I hadn't thought about that, because I assumed everything was happening regardless of my setup. But then one night I forgot to turn off the kitchen light before bed, completely accidental, just left it on. The next morning there was no clip of the light turning on, obviously because it was already on, but there was a clip of it turning off. At 3:02 a.m. that stopped me, because that hadn't happened before. The light had only ever turned on, now it had turned off. Which meant it wasn't just activating things, it was adjusting them. That same night I had left the bathroom door slightly open, on purpose, just to see, and sure enough in the footage it closed, not fully, just enough to match how I usually leave it, which is shut. I watched those clips over and over, because now this wasn't just movement, it was correction, adjustment, like something was taking the state of the house and aligning it with a specific version of how it should be, and that version matched my habits. That realization hit harder than anything else so far, because up until then I could tell myself that something was just happening, but now it was responding to my patterns, to my routine, which meant it was aware of them in some way. I tested it again the next night, more deliberately this time, left multiple things wrong. Kitchen light on, cabinet open, bathroom door halfway shut, back door unlocked, just small deviations from my usual routine. Then I went to bed, and in the morning the footage showed everything being corrected, one by one in sequence, light off, cabinet closed, door shut, back door locked, every single thing, adjusted, not randomly, not aggressively, just precisely, and that's when the situation changed again. Because now it wasn't just something happening in the house, it was something maintaining it, keeping it in a specific state, a state that matched me, my habits, my routine, my preferences. I remember standing in the kitchen that morning looking at everything, and thinking one very specific thought: what was it doing before I moved in? Because if it was aligning things to my routine now, then it must have been aligning to something before, someone else, another pattern, another set of habits. Thought stayed with me because it meant this didn't start with me, I had just stepped into it. For the next few days I didn't change anything, I just followed my routine exactly, perfectly, lights off, doors closed, everything in place, and during those nights nothing happened, no clips, no movement, no changes, just stillness, which confirmed it completely. It only acted when something was wrong, and wrong meant not matching the expected pattern. That should have made things easier. In a way, because now I had control. If I kept everything aligned, nothing would happen, no movement, no clips, no disturbances, but that control came with a cost, because now I wasn't just living in the house. I was maintaining a condition, following a set of rules, unspoken, unclear, but real, and that's not the same as feeling safe, it's just feeling managed. After I figured out the pattern, I changed how I lived in the house, not dramatically, not all at once, just gradually. Because once you realize something responds to your behavior, you start adjusting, even if you don't mean to. At first it was small things. making sure every light was off before bed, double-checking doors, closing cabinets fully, just tightening the routine, and as long as I did that, nothing happened. No clips, no movement, no sounds, just silence, which should have been reassuring, and in a way it was, because it meant I had some level of control, but it also created something else. Something I didn't expect, pressure, because now if something did happen, it meant I had made a mistake, missed something, left something out of place. And that meant I wasn't just living there anymore, I was maintaining the system. I didn't like that feeling, not at all, because it meant the house wasn't passive, it wasn't just a space. It was interactive, not directly, but through rules. After about a week of this, I started noticing something else, something subtle. When I followed the routine perfectly, the house felt quieter. Not physically quieter, just less tense, which sounds ridiculous, I know, but it's the best way I can describe it. Like there was a difference between nothing happening because nothing needed to be fixed and nothing happening because something was waiting, and I couldn't tell which one it was, so I tested it again. Not by breaking everything, but by making a small change. One thing, I left the bathroom light on, just that. Everything else was normal, doors locked, cabinets closed, everything aligned except that one light. Then I went to bed. That night I woke up not fully, just enough to notice something. The light still on, but there was something else. A sound, soft from the hallway, not a click this time, more like a shift, like something adjusting. I stayed still, didn't get up, didn't move, just listened. And after a few seconds, the light turned off. No footsteps, no movement I could see, just off. The next morning, there was no clip at all, which confused me, because every other time something had changed, the camera had recorded it. So I checked the settings, still on, still working. No issues. Then I checked the timeline more carefully, and there was something, not a motion clip, just a tiny spike in activity at 3:03 a.m. but no recording. Which meant whatever triggered the change hadn't triggered the camera. That didn't make sense, because before everything had been visible. Recorded, observable, now something had happened without being captured. That was the moment things shifted again, because now it wasn't just that something was happening, it was that it wasn't always visible, even when I had the tools set up to see it. That same day I moved the camera, not drastically, just adjusted the angle so it covered more of the hallway, more of the kitchen entrance, wider view, better coverage, or at least that's what I thought. That night I did something different. I didn't leave anything out of place. Everything was perfect. Routine followed exactly, and I stayed awake again, sitting in the living room, watching, waiting. Time passed slowly. Same as before, the house quiet, the outside world barely noticeable. Around 2:55 a.m. I felt it again. Not a sound, not a movement, just that shift, that awareness, like something had started, even though nothing had happened yet. Then the kitchen light turned on, right in front of me, same as before. No hesitation, no flicker. Just on. I stood up immediately this time, walked toward it, faster than before, not running but not slow either. And when I reached the kitchen, everything was still. Same as before, no movement, no presence, just the light. But this time I didn't turn it off right away. I just stood there looking around, waiting, and after a few seconds I heard something behind me. From the hallway, I turned quickly and saw nothing, but I knew something had moved. Because the bathroom door was different, not fully open, not closed, just slightly more open than it had been, and that's when it hit me. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting to it. It was happening while I was moving, while I was aware, while I was present. I turned back toward the kitchen, and in that moment, something else changed. One of the cabinet doors opened, slowly, right in front of me. No delay, no hidden cause, just movement. I didn't step back, didn't panic. I just stood there, watching, because at that point, there was nothing else to do, and for a few seconds, everything was happening at once. Not chaotic, still controlled, but no longer waiting for me to be unaware. Then it stopped, all of it. Light on, cabinet open, door slightly ajar, and silence. I stood there for a long time after that because something had changed. Not the behavior itself, but the condition. It wasn't limited to when I was asleep anymore. It wasn't limited to when I wasn't looking. It was happening regardless, and that removed the last bit of distance I had, because before I could pretend it existed in a separate space, a separate time. Now it was happening in the same moment as me. That's when I started thinking about leaving, not because I was scared, not exactly, but because I understood something now. Whatever this was, it wasn't going to stop, and it wasn't going to explain itself, and staying meant continuing to adapt to it, and I wasn't sure I wanted to keep doing that. After that night, I stopped trying to understand it, not because I didn't want answers, but because every time I got closer to understanding something, it just changed again. Like the moment I thought I had a rule figured out, it would stretch it, expand it, or quietly break it, and that's exhausting. So instead of trying to explain it, I started thinking practically, what do I do about this? Not what is it, not why is it happening. Just what now? The first idea was obvious. Leave, simple, pack up, find somewhere else, move on. And honestly, that's what I probably should have done immediately, but there was a problem. Nothing had actually hurt me, nothing had been aggressive, nothing had escalated beyond movement. Lights, doors, cabinets, that's it, no damage, no threats, no direct interaction. And that made it harder to justify leaving. Because how do you explain that to anyone? I'm moving out because my house adjusts itself at night. That doesn't sound real, even to me, so instead I decided to prepare not for something specific, just in general. I packed a small bag, clothes, charger, essentials, left it by the door just in case. I also kept my phone on me at all times, even in the house, which wasn't something I used to do, and then I did something else, something I hadn't tried yet. I stopped following the pattern completely. That night I left everything wrong. Not just one or two things, everything, lights on in multiple rooms, cabinets open, bathroom door wide open, back door unlocked, even left a chair slightly pulled out from the table. Just disrupted everything. Then I went to bed, door unlocked this time. No chime, no control, just letting it happen. I don't know why I did that. Maybe I wanted to overwhelm it. Maybe I wanted to see if there was a limit. Or maybe I just didn't want to keep playing by rules I didn't understand. That night was different, not in what happened, but in how it felt. I woke up multiple times, not fully, just enough to notice sounds, more than usual, not louder. Just more frequent clicks, shifts, small movements, all throughout that 2:30 to 3:30 window. And in the morning the house was correct again. Everything, every light off, every door closed, every cabinet shut, even the chair was pushed back in. Perfectly aligned with my usual routine. Not the chaotic version I had left behind, but there was something else, something new, something I hadn't seen before. On the kitchen counter there was a glass filled with water. I stopped when I saw it, because I hadn't done that, not before bed, not during the night, and it wasn't something I usually did at all. I don't leave glasses out like that, especially not full ones. I walked over slowly, looked at it, completely normal glass, tap water, nothing strange, but the placement felt intentional. Centered on the counter, not near the sink, not near anything else. Just there. That was the first time something appeared that wasn't just a correction, not fixing. Not aligning, adding. I didn't touch it right away. I just stood there, looking at it, trying to process what that meant. Because up until that point, everything had been about restoring a state. Now something new had been introduced. Eventually I picked it up, smelled it, normal, took a small sip, just water, nothing else. But the action itself, that's what stayed with me, because it didn't fit the pattern. At all, that day I didn't feel the same way in the house, not just uneasy, different. Because now whatever this was wasn't just maintaining, it was interacting, not directly but deliberately. That night I didn't sleep in the bedroom, I stayed on the couch, lights on, TV playing quietly, not because I thought it would stop anything, just because I didn't want to be in the same position as before, alone in a closed room, separated from the rest of the house. And around 3 a.m. it started again, same as always, subtle at first, then the kitchen light turned on. Even though it was already on, which didn't make sense because it was already on, but I felt it happen like a shift. Then the bathroom door moved, just slightly. Then the cabinet, same one opening, and I was watching all of it, again. But this time I noticed something different. The order, it wasn't the same as before it had been consistent. Now it was slightly off, and that's when it hit me. The pattern wasn't fixed, it was adapting. I didn't stay that night, not until morning. Around 3:30 I grabbed my bag, walked out of the house, got in my car, and left. I didn't run, didn't panic, just left because something had changed. And I didn't want to wait to see how far it would go. I didn't go far that night, just drove about 15 minutes to a 24-hour gas station and parked there for a while. Not because I had a plan, just because I needed to be somewhere normal, bright lights, people moving around, cars coming and going. Something that didn't feel controlled or quiet in that same way. I sat in the car for maybe an hour, didn't really think about anything clearly. Just let everything settle, because up until that point I had been inside it, trying to understand it from within, and that's not the same as stepping outside and seeing it for what it is. Eventually I checked into a cheap motel nearby, nothing fancy, just a place to stay for the night. And for the first time in days I slept, not perfectly, but enough. No sounds, no movement, no waking up every hour, just sleep. When I woke up the next morning I expected to feel relieved, and I did, a little, but there was something else too, something I didn't expect, curiosity. Because now that I wasn't in the house, I started thinking about it differently, not as something happening to me, but as something happening in that space, and that created distance, which made it easier to think. So instead of avoiding it, I went back, later that day. In broad daylight, the house looked exactly the same. No signs of anything unusual, no damage, no changes, just normal, which at this point felt almost misleading. I walked inside slowly, not cautious in a dramatic way. Just aware, like I was stepping back into something I had temporarily paused. Everything was in place, exactly how I had left it the morning before, except the glass of water was gone. That stopped me immediately, because I hadn't touched it after that morning. And there was no reason for it to be gone. I checked the sink. Nothing, dishwasher, empty, trash, nothing, it had just disappeared. I stood there in the kitchen for a while, because now things weren't just being adjusted, they were being introduced and removed. That changed everything, because now it wasn't just maintaining a pattern. It was interacting with objects, with the environment, with presence. I didn't stay long that day, maybe an hour, just enough to confirm nothing else obvious had changed. Then I left again. That evening I made a decision. I wasn't going to sleep there, not yet. Instead I stayed at a friend's place. Told them I needed a couple days out of the house. Didn't explain why, just kept it simple. For the next 2 nights I didn't go back, and nothing followed. No strange messages, no unexplained calls, no weird events, just normal life, which should have been reassuring. And in a way it was, because it meant whatever this was tied to the house. Not to me. But that didn't make it easier, because now the question changed. Not what is happening to me, but what is happening there. On the third day, I went back again, this time with a different approach. I didn't set up the camera, didn't prepare anything, didn't try to control the situation. I just entered the house and sat. No TV, no phone, just sitting in the living room. Quiet, I stayed there for hours. Nothing happened, not during the day, not in the evening. Everything stayed still. And for a moment, I thought maybe it only happened when I slept there. Maybe that was the condition. So that night, I decided to test it one last time. I stayed, no camera, no setup, no pattern control. Just stayed. Around 2:45 a.m. I felt it again, that same shift, that same awareness, and then something happened that hadn't happened before. I heard footsteps, not loud, not heavy, just soft, from the hallway. I didn't move, didn't react, just listened. Because this was different. This wasn't a click, or a door, or a light. This was movement, and it was moving toward the living room. Slow, measured, and for the first time since this started, I felt something close to fear, because up until that moment, everything had been indirect, objects moving, things changing. Now it sounded like something was moving. I turned my head slowly toward the hallway, and I saw nothing, but the sound continued, one more step, then another, then it stopped. Right at the edge of the living room, and the silence that followed was heavier than anything before. I didn't speak, didn't move, didn't even breathe differently. Because at that point, it wasn't about understanding anymore. It was about presence, and I knew I wasn't alone in the house. I didn't move, not when the footsteps stopped, not when the silence settled in, not even when every instinct in my body was telling me to get up and leave, because there's a moment in situations like that where movement feels like a decision, and I didn't want to make one yet, so I just sat there, on the couch, looking toward the hallway, waiting. Nothing came out of it. No shadow, no figure, no movement into the room, just absence, but not empty absence. That's the important part. It felt like something was there, just not visible. I don't know how long that lasted. Maybe a minute, maybe longer. Time doesn't really work the same way when you're that focused on something. Eventually, something else happened, not in front of me. Behind me, a sound soft like glass. I turned slowly, and saw it on the coffee table. A glass of water, not the same one as before, different placement, different angle, but the same idea. I hadn't moved, hadn't gone into the kitchen, hadn't touched anything, and yet there it was. That was the moment everything became clear. Not the situation, not what it was, but my role in it. This wasn't random. This wasn't just correction. This wasn't just pattern alignment. This was interaction, not aggressive, not direct, but deliberate. I looked back toward the hallway, still nothing visible, still no movement, but that same feeling was there, and for the first time I did something different. I spoke, not loudly, not confrontational, just normal. I didn't ask for that. The words felt strange, not because of what I said, but because I didn't know who I was saying it to. Nothing happened, first, just silence. Then from the kitchen, a soft click. I didn't turn this time, I just listened, and after a few seconds, another sound. Water. I stood up slowly, not rushing, not panicking, just moving. Walked into the kitchen, and the sink was running, not fully, just a thin stream. I walked over, turned it off, and stood there for a second, because now it wasn't just placing things, it was responding, not in words, not in clear actions, but in a way that acknowledged what I had said, that changed everything. I went back to the living room. The glass was still on the table, unchanged. I didn't touch it, didn't move it, just left it there. Then I sat back down, same position, same angle. Looking toward the hallway, and I said something else. Stop, again not loud, not emotional, just direct. This time the response was immediate. The kitchen light turned off, no delay, no transition, just off, and that's when I understood something simple and uncomfortable. This wasn't something happening independently anymore. It was reacting, not randomly, not aggressively, but in a structured way, like it was following something, rules, and I had just become part of them. I didn't stay much longer after that. Not because I was scared, but because I had reached a point where staying didn't give me anything new. I stood up, grabbed my bag, walked to the front door, and before I left I looked back. The glass was still on the table, the hallway still empty, the house still quiet, like nothing had happened. I opened the door, stepped outside, closed it behind me, and that was the last night I stayed there. I didn't go back after that night, not to stay. Not even to test anything again, because by that point I wasn't trying to understand it anymore. I had already crossed the line where understanding would actually change anything. I spent the next few days at my friend's place, told them I was figuring out a lease situation, kept it vague, didn't explain anything because I already knew how it would sound, and honestly, I didn't want to hear it out loud myself. But even though I wasn't in the house anymore, it didn't leave my head. Not even close, because once something like that happens, your brain keeps trying to put it into some kind of structure, some kind of logic, even when there isn't any. After about 3 days, I went back one last time, not at night, not alone in that same way, just during the day, to pack. The house looked exactly the same. Same light through the windows, same quiet street outside, same layout, nothing visibly different, but it didn't feel the same, not anymore, because now every room had context. The kitchen wasn't just a kitchen, it was where things changed, where the glass had appeared, where the sink had turned on. The hallway wasn't just a hallway, it was where movement happened, where the footsteps had stopped. And the living room, that was where I had realized I wasn't alone. I packed quickly, didn't take my time, didn't sit down, didn't stay in any one room longer than necessary. And while I was there, nothing happened, not a sound, not a movement. Not even that subtle shift, which almost felt deliberate, like whatever had been happening wasn't active during the day, or didn't need to be. Before I left, I checked one thing, the camera. I hadn't looked at it since that last night, hadn't even opened the app, so I scrolled back through the last few nights. The footage was there, all of it, the lights, the doors, the cabinets, and then the last night, there were clips, multiple, but they were different, not because of what happened, but because of what didn't. In every previous clip, there was always a clear moment, a change, something moving. In these, there were gaps. Moments where something had clearly happened, but there was no visible cause, no transition, just before and after, like the camera had missed the middle, or like there wasn't a middle to capture. That didn't make sense. But at that point, nothing needed to make sense anymore. I closed the app, turned the camera off, packed it, and that was it. I left the house. Locked the door, handed the keys back to the landlord the next day. Told him I had to relocate for work. He didn't question it, didn't ask much, just processed it like a normal move-out, which is exactly how it looked from the outside. Normal, that's the part that stuck with me the most. From the outside, there was nothing there. No signs, no history, no warnings, just a house. And I had lived in it long enough to know that didn't mean anything. After I left, life went back to normal. Or at least it looked like it did. New place. Smaller. Apartment this time. Shared walls again, noise from neighbors, doors slamming somewhere down the hall, people talking, music, all the little things that used to annoy me now felt grounding, because nothing in that space was controlled. Nothing was consistent in that same precise way. Things were messy, unpredictable, human, and that's what I realized I had been missing in that house. Not safety, not comfort, just randomness, at first. I didn't think about it much, just focused on settling in. Work, routine, normal life, and for a while nothing happened. No strange patterns, no movement, no unexplained anything. Which should have been the end of it. But the thing about experiences like that is they don't really end. They just stop actively happening. A few weeks after I moved, I noticed something small. I came home late one night, walked into the apartment, dropped my keys on the table. And one of the lights was already on. Now, in a normal situation, that wouldn't mean anything. Maybe I left it on. Maybe I forgot, but after everything that had happened, my brain didn't process it that way. It paused, not fear, just recognition. That same pattern, that same type of change. I stood there for a second, looking at the light, then I turned it off, and that was it. Nothing else happened that night, or the next, and slowly I let it go. Because there's a difference between something happening repeatedly and something that might have been coincidence. And I needed it to be coincidence, but even now there are moments, small ones, where I'll leave a room and come back and something feels slightly different. Not obviously wrong, not enough to prove anything, just off, and I catch myself thinking about it, not in a panicked way, just aware. Because once you've experienced something like that, you don't really go back to not noticing. You just learn how to live around it. And maybe that's the part that stays. Not the house, not the events, just the understanding that sometimes things don't need to be visible to be there. Even now I still think about that house. Not every day, not constantly. Just occasionally. Usually it happens in quiet moments. Late at night when everything else settles down. I'll be sitting in my apartment and I'll notice something small, a light left on, a door slightly open, something out of place. And for just a second there, that thought, is it going to fix itself? Of course, it never does. Nothing moves, nothing changes, everything stays exactly how I left it, and that's normal, that's how it's supposed to be. But that moment, that expectation, that's the part that stayed, because the house wasn't chaotic, it wasn't dangerous, it wasn't trying to hurt me, it was consistent, too consistent, everything had a place, a position, a correct state, and whatever was in that house maintained it. Not aggressively, not violently, just precisely, and the strangest part, for a while I adjusted to it, I followed the pattern. I kept things aligned, I lived inside that system like it was normal, and that's the part that bothers me now, not what it did, not how it worked, but how easy it was to adapt, because at no point did I fully understand it, and at no point did it explain itself, it just existed, and I existed with it, until I chose not to. I never went back. Never tried to investigate further. Never asked the landlord about previous tenants, because honestly I don't think I want answers. Some things feel better left as they are, unexplained, unresolved, just something that happened and something you walked away from. The house is probably still there. Same street, same quiet neighborhood, same routines happening around it. From the outside, it would look completely normal. And maybe it still is, or maybe it's still maintaining something. Just not for me anymore, and that's where this story ends. Alright, that's going to be it for this one. A little different from the usual stories. Less about people, more about something that just doesn't quite behave the way it should. If you made it this far, you're probably either deep into your game or already half asleep. Either way, I hope it helped you relax a bit. And like always, feel free to leave a comment telling me what you were doing while listening. I'll see you in the next one.